offset the biodiversity impact of the original mine and the impact of the dewatering on the ecosystems above the aquifer. Now there's, this diagram shows the mitigation hierarchy. Just a very brief note on how biodiversity offsets fits into the mitigation hierarchy. Rio Tinto does its utmost to avoid, to minimize, and to rehabilitate any negative impacts on the environment associated with its operations. And only that unavoidable residual impact is considered for offsetting. Now the project, the work that we're doing with them, this ecosystem evaluation of dewatering and the ecosystem impacts associated with dewatering, is treated through this process, and I showed it in my earlier presentation, of this focus on the biophysical structure, the ecosystem and its associated function, and trying to map that ecosystem to the provision of a service and how people use those services, and to derive values from those. Now for this project, we've been looking at quantifying the net benefits of dewatering. So getting a very clear idea of the full costs and benefits, including the ecosystem costs and benefits, and looking at different scenarios based on the water disposal options. So the baseline was that there would be no mine expansion and no dewatering. They would just close the mine because the dewatering would have unacceptable impacts on the environment. Scenario one was the mine expansion plus the first three water use options, the use in towns and mines, re-injection, and then disposing of the residual into these creek beds, and just limiting dewatering to be able to respect the rules about how much water could be disposed in creek beds. And then the second scenario was really to look at what would be the impact of hay production and destocking, and to look at the costs and benefits of that, to design that option in an optimal way. Now the ecosystem services that we're looking at are habitat and biodiversity, food and fiber production, carbon sequestration, soil erosion, tourism, recreation and cultural and spiritual values. And we started by working with academics in the area and the technical people within the company to quantify the marginal changes to ecosystems as a result of the range of water disposal options. Now, in terms of valuing these marginal changes, we're using a number of different methods. For the biodiversity values, there's no other method than the stated preference methods that I talked about earlier. You can't, most of the biodiversity values are existence values, and there's only one method to do that. So we're doing a choice modeling survey, presenting to people different scenarios about the state of the native bush, which is to be restored, and their preferences for certain states. For the recreational benefits and avoided soil erosion, we're using benefit transfer. There's been a lot of work done in Australia. There are good estimates about recreational values and the role of soil erosion. We're looking at market values for carbon sequestration based on the restoration of the pastoral station. And then the really tricky bit has been how do we treat Indigenous cultural values? Obviously, the values that Indigenous people have for this area, the cultural and spiritual values, are not going to be quantified in an economic way. However, we would like to capture the preferences of Indigenous people for the different scenarios that will be presented in the choice modeling survey for what the native bush would look like once it's been destocked. And it's very tricky, but we're actually being pushed to try and, what's been done in the past with spiritual values is that it's described in a qualitative way next to the valuation of a whole lot of other ecosystem services and biodiversity. And when it comes to integrating that information in a meaningful way into decision making, into a financial decision, the valuation work gets read, and the qualitative work is treated separately, and often it just drops off the radar. So we're exploring how to integrate spiritual values in a quantitative way, but not asking people to put a price, people who are not accustomed to dealing in monetary units. So it's this is a work in progress, and it's really an exploration. And it's going to take a lot of time and research, but I think it's an important area of research, because valuation does run up against some barriers, and it's important to know how information from valuation can be used in a complementary way to other types of information. And I will end with this slide, which is basically showing how valuation information fits into a broader cost-benefit analysis, where you've got dewatering of a certain amount a day, you've got your water use options, supplying mines, towns, re-injection, and the residual creek discharge. And now we're introducing a final option of hay production and the destocking. Now, usually companies will just do the grey box, is the financial analysis, and the environmental work gets treated in a qualitative way. What we're trying to do is to put numbers to these biodiversity, carbon and water benefits. And I've got pluses or minus, and they're just to indicate that it could go either way. But the idea is to have a net effect at the bottom, with these quantified and valued, to better inform decision making about moving iron ore production from above to below water table. Thank you.
Thanks, Natalie, for a comprehensive assessment. Thank you. The final formal presentation we've got this morning is from Mathieu. Mathieu is from the area, and well, that's the correct title. I was going to say Assessing the Value of Watershed Management, but Mathieu, can you go into more detail about that, please? Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. So within the next 20 minutes, I will explain where did we start with ecosystem evaluation within Veolia Water. How did we use the first case study to build a more comprehensive ecosystem evaluation program, and I will present in more detail the one application of CEV that was part of this ecosystem services program. So the first experience we had with ecosystem evaluation was the corporate ecosystem evaluation guidelines road test we did in 2010. So we had the opportunity to assess different land and water use option on the land field we have in Germany. So I'm not gonna. So the results was quite interesting. We wanted to go further, but we couldn't do such valuation anywhere, anytime. So we wanted to investigate ecosystem services and to know where that would be the more important and the more interesting for us to do such studies. So the general idea was to concentrate efforts where the biggest potential values were, and where our influence on these ecosystem services was the more significant. So we had some criteria of choice to select the site out of this first part of the program. And the idea is to use the values to help decision making at site level, and to have a more prospective reflection on our business model at corporate level. So for drinking water production activity, the main criteria we had identified was the size of the protection scope, so at least 40 hectares, with an ecological management in place that would protect an important water resource and that would be associated with some recreational activities. A second criteria would be the fact that the catchment field would be part of a floodplain or close to an urban area liable to flooding. So we, with this criteria, we selected this Crépioch-Charmy site, which is located in France, east of Lyon. So this is the largest catchment field in Europe, close to 400 hectares. It provides drinking water for near to the whole city of Lyon, so it's more than a million inhabitants. It has a 5 years ecological management plan in place, and no public access because that's part of the law. But we believe that this site has some, and the ecological management we have on this site participate to maintain and enhance ecosystem services. So we wanted to highlight these hidden benefits of this activity by doing an evaluation study. So the main ecosystem services, the more significant we had on this site was obviously the water purification service, the natural heritage of the site, some recreational activities that were not on the site because the access is forbidden, but that takes place nearby the site, and the carbon sequestration that is associated with the vegetation. So as I said, the business case was to assess the hidden benefits or positive externalities linked to the site. So we had to deal with different stakeholders, with our client, the municipality, and different public authorities and local NGOs. So to get the data required to do this study, we had some on-site meeting. We investigate some public statistic database. We had a lot of phone calls, interview, mails, so that whole project required about 40 days over 6 months. It's quite a lot. It's because it's quite of an iterative process. You ask questions, you get data, you have some new questions, you have to get back to the same people to ask questions to some other people. So it's always more complicated than you think it's going to be. And now we're going to get to the valuation part, and I will need your participation. We're going to try to play a new game called Who Wants to Be an Eco-Millionaire. So you have this colored sheets of paper with you. So I'm gonna ask the question on each ecosystem services that we valued. Which valuation techniques would you use if you were Veolia? So for the first one, the water purification service, would you use the production cost avoided or replacement cost? That is to say, if we lose this catchment field, we would still have to make some drinking water for the city, so we would replace it by an equivalent. A second valuation technique would be a substitute price to bring water from elsewhere and to bring it, such as bottled water, for example. And the third valuation techniques would be a value transfer. So raise your...
Explain what value transfer is.
a value transfer that would that is to say we would take the cost of the production of water elsewhere, and we would adapt it to the context of this this particular site. So we would not do evaluation techniques specific to this site, but we would transfer the value from another study that has been done elsewhere. So
and all could be used.
So that as we are in the second part of the session, so you should start to have some knowledge thanks to Natalie. So the tricky part is that all these valuation techniques could have been used in general for these ecosystem services, but in my particular specific situation, we use one of them for, so
guess. Try and
guess.
Okay.
Which one? Okay, so I see that Natalie did a good job. Most of the answers was the good one. So we did the production cost avoided. So to compare the cost of this catchment field compared to the cost of a traditional facility. But we did that because we had the chance of having an emergency plant just by the river next to the site. So we had all the data available to do this valuation techniques. Otherwise, we would probably have done a value transfer, because substitute price would not have been so relevant for that. So the second one, natural heritage of the site. So the first possibility would be to do a contingent valuation, to ask people living around the site what would be their willingness to pay to ensure that the site is maintained as it is. To do another a choice experiment. It's like choice modeling. It's same as contingent valuation, but a little bit more complicated with and again a value transfer. So what would be your answers? Okay, so that would so most of the if we had the time and resource to do the contingent valuation, most of you said contingent valuation, we would have done that, but obviously this is a complicated and very time and resource consuming valuation technique. So most of the time, unfortunately, we are doing value transfer, but on that specific case, once again, we had the chance to have two contingent valuation studies available that has been done not so far from this site in France, less than 5 years ago. So the values was quite accurate, and we could have, and we did a quite robust value transfer for that. So the third one, the carbon sequestration. So the first techniques can be the damage cost avoided, and the second would be the market price, and the third, the replacement cost. Okay, you're getting back on track. So that's the good answer. We use the market price. So in France, we have a 32 euros per ton price for carbon, and we use it to assess the capital that represent that the carbon sequestrated in the site represent.
Sorry,
and
who has decided that price level, 32?
It's the French government. We do not have market price in France at the moment. We're gonna have it sooner or later, but the value that has been proposed by the government was 32 euro per ton. So, and the last ecosystem services that we valued on this site was the recreational activities such as hunting, fishing, that takes place nearby the site. So the first technique to do that is to use market price. So all the expenses that hunters are doing to come and do the hunting. The second option would be a contingent valuation, to ask them what would be their willingness to pay to ensure that they can continue to hunt on the nearby the site. And the third one, the travel cost. So the expenses just to come to the site and do. So what would be the answer for you? Okay, I think there's more green than yellow, so you have the. It could be everything. In fact, we didn't succeed to have monetary values for these last ecosystem services because we didn't have the data for political reasons mainly. For example, the hunters do not accept that the access to the site is protected, so they didn't want to give us some information